The desert sun blazed mercilessly as Captain Rachel Porter gripped her F-16's control stick, sweat beading beneath her helmet. Below, the sprawling military base looked deceptively peaceful from 20,000 feet. Her radio crackled with routine chatter from the control tower, but Rachel's hands trembled slightly. This wasn't another training exercise. Today, for the first time in her distinguished career, she would face real enemy aircraft in actual combat. Everything was about to change. If you're a veteran or know someone who served, this story will hit close to home. Drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. Are you a fellow pilot, veteran, or proud military family member? Rachel Porter had always been good at flying. At the Air Force Academy, instructors called her a natural. Her test scores were perfect. Her landings were textbook smooth. She could thread an F-16 through training courses that made other pilots sweat. That was before today. Falcon 2-1, you're cleared for combat air patrol. Vector heading 270. The controller's voice crackled through her headset. Copy, tower. Falcon 2-1 heading 270. Rachel banked her F-16 left, scanning the endless brown desert below. Her wingman, Captain Jake Morrison, flew in tight formation off her right wing. They'd been paired together for 3 months now. Jake was the kind of pilot who made everything look easy, the kind other pilots wanted to fly with. Beautiful morning for a milk run, Porter, Jake said over the radio. Should be quiet out here. Rachel keyed her mic. Roger that. All quiet on the western front. The morning sun painted the cockpit golden. Rachel checked her instruments for the 10th time in 5 minutes. Fuel good. Systems green. Weapons armed and ready. Everything exactly as it should be. Then the radar operator's voice cut through the comm. Falcon flight, be advised. We have multiple bandits inbound from the north. Range 40 miles and closing fast. Rachel's stomach dropped. She'd trained for this moment hundreds of times, but training was different. Training had reset buttons and instructors who could stop everything if something went wrong. This was real. Falcon 2-1 copies, Jake responded immediately. Rachel, you got visual on anything? Rachel squinted through her canopy at the empty sky ahead. Her heart pounded against her flight suit. She switched her radar to combat mode and watched green blips appear on her screen. 4 aircraft. Coming in hot. Negative visual, she managed. But I've got 4 contacts on radar. Same here. Looks like they want to dance. Jake's voice stayed steady, almost cheerful. You ready for this, Porter? The question hung in the air. Rachel had been ready for everything else. Ready for flight school. Ready for advanced training. Ready for deployment. But sitting here now, with enemy aircraft racing toward her at 500 miles per hour, she wondered if ready was something you could actually be. Falcon flight, bandits now 20 miles out. Recommend immediate intercept. Jake pulled ahead, his F-16 cutting through the air like a knife. Porter, take the 2 on the right. I'll handle the left side. Rachel pushed her throttle forward. The F-16 surged ahead, pressing her back into her ejection seat. The enemy aircraft were visible now, small dark spots growing larger by the second. Her weapons system beeped, indicating a lock. Fox 2. Jake's voice shouted over the radio as he fired a missile. Rachel's finger hovered over her own weapon release. The enemy aircraft filled her targeting display. All she had to do was squeeze the trigger. She'd done it 1,000 times in simulation. But her finger wouldn't move. Porter, take the shot. Jake yelled. The enemy aircraft banked hard right, breaking formation. Rachel's targeting system lost its lock. She tried to reacquire, but her hands felt clumsy on the controls. The aircraft she'd been tracking disappeared into a cloud bank. Falcon 2-1, where's your missile? The controller's voice sounded urgent now. Rachel opened her mouth but no words came out. She watched Jake's missile streak across the sky and connect with an enemy aircraft. Orange flames bloomed against the blue. One down. Porter, talk to me. Jake called out. The remaining enemy aircraft scattered. Two headed east toward the mountains. One came straight for Rachel, its nose pointed directly at her cockpit. Brake right. Brake right. Jake shouted. Rachel yanked the stick hard right. Her F-16 rolled into a steep turn, G-forces crushing her into her seat. The enemy aircraft flashed past her canopy, so close she could see the pilot's helmet. Splash 2, Jake announced calmly. That's 2 bandits down. The remaining enemy aircraft retreated toward the mountains. Within minutes, the sky was clear again. Just Rachel and Jake, flying in formation like nothing had happened. Good work out there, Falcon Flight, the controller said. Return to base. Jake pulled up alongside Rachel's aircraft. Through his canopy, she could see him looking at her. Even with his oxygen mask on, she knew he was frowning. The flight back to base felt like it took forever. Rachel's hands still shook slightly on the controls. She kept replaying those seconds when she should have fired. When her training should have taken over but didn't. The runway appeared ahead, heat waves dancing off the concrete. Rachel lined up for landing, her F-16 touching down smooth as always. Some things never changed. But as she taxied toward the flight line, she could see other pilots gathering near the Squadron building. Word traveled fast on military bases. By the time she shut down her engines, everyone would know. Captain Rachel Porter had frozen in her first real fight. The Squadron briefing room felt smaller than usual. Rachel sat in the back row, trying to make herself invisible while Colonel Martinez stood at the front with a laser pointer and a serious expression. Yesterday's engagement resulted in 2 enemy aircraft destroyed with no friendly casualties, Martinez said. Captain Morrison's quick thinking and accurate missile work prevented what could have been a successful enemy strike on our position. Scattered applause filled the room. Jake nodded from the front row, accepting the praise like he always did. Easy and comfortable. Martinez clicked to the next slide. However, there were some communication issues during the engagement that we need to address. Rachel felt every pair of eyes in the room shift toward her. Heat crept up her neck. Captain Morrison will brief us on the engagement. Jake stood and walked to the front. He clicked through radar screenshots and targeting data like he was discussing the weather. At 1400 hours, we intercepted 4 bandits approximately 20 miles north of the base, Jake began. Initial engagement parameters were textbook. Both aircraft achieved radar lock simultaneously. Rachel stared at her hands. She knew what came next. During the engagement, Falcon 2-1 experienced a targeting malfunction that prevented weapons release. Jake's voice stayed professional, but Rachel caught the slight pause before malfunction. This resulted in temporary loss of formation integrity and required immediate tactical adjustment. Captain Lisa Chen, who flew Falcon 3, raised her hand. What kind of malfunction? Electrical? Software? Jake glanced at Rachel, then back at Chen. Equipment failure is still under investigation. The lie hit Rachel like a punch. Jake was covering for her, and somehow that made everything worse. She wanted to stand up and tell the truth, but the words stuck in her throat just like they had yesterday. After the briefing, pilots filed out in small groups, their voices echoing in the hallway. Rachel gathered her notes slowly, hoping everyone would leave first. Porter. Colonel Martinez's voice stopped her at the door. A word. The room emptied except for the 2 of them. Martinez sat on the edge of the briefing table, his arms crossed. You want to tell me what really happened up there? Rachel met his eyes. Sir, Captain Morrison covered it in his brief. Morrison gave me the official version. I'm asking you for the truth. The air conditioning hummed in the silence. Rachel could hear voices from the hallway, other pilots making plans for dinner, comparing notes about their missions. Normal life continuing around her. I hesitated, she said finally. Martinez nodded. For how long? Maybe 3 seconds. Maybe 4. In air-to-air combat, for seconds is forever. Yes, sir. Martinez stood and walked to the window. Outside, crew chiefs were preparing F-16s for the evening patrol. The same routine that happened every day. You've got the best scores I've seen in 10 years, he said without turning around. Your instructors at Nellis called you exceptional. So what happened? Rachel thought about her answer. She could talk about equipment failure or radio malfunction or any number of technical excuses. But sitting here now, she knew none of them would be true. I don't know, sir. Martinez turned back to face her. I'm pulling you from combat missions until we figure this out. You'll fly patrol and reconnaissance only. No weapons. The words hit harder than Rachel expected. Sir, if I could just... This isn't punishment, Captain. This is keeping you and your wingman alive. Rachel nodded and headed for the door. Porter. Martinez's voice stopped her again. Everyone freezes eventually. The good pilots figure out why and fix it. The others find new careers. The hallway was empty now. Rachel walked toward the exit, her boots echoing on the polished floor. Through the windows, she could see Jake talking with Chen and two other pilots near the flight line. They were laughing about something. She pushed through the doors into the desert heat. The sun was setting, painting the mountains purple and orange. Beautiful evening for flying. She wouldn't be doing any. Her phone buzzed with a text message. Jake. You okay? Wanna grab dinner? Rachel typed back quickly. Thanks, but I'm tired. Rain check? She didn't wait for his response. Instead, she walked toward her quarters, past the mess hall where she could hear pilots telling stories about their missions. Past the rec room where someone was playing guitar badly but enthusiastically. Her room was small and neat. Regulation everything. She sat on her bunk and pulled out her phone, scrolling to her mother's number. Back home in Ohio, it would be almost midnight, but her mother always answered. Hi, honey. How are things? Rachel stared at the ceiling. Such a simple question. Good, Mom. Everything's good. They talked for 20 minutes about nothing important. The weather back home. Her mother's garden. Her cousin's new baby. Safe topics that didn't require any difficult truths. After she hung up, Rachel lay back on her pillow and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow there would be more patrols, more briefings, more chances for everyone to remember what she'd done wrong. Or more accurately, what she'd failed to do right. But tonight, she just needed to figure out why her finger wouldn't pull that trigger when it mattered most. Rachel stood in front of the flight simulator at 5 in the morning. The hangar was empty except for the night shift mechanics working on the far side. The simulator's screens glowed blue in the darkness, waiting for her to climb inside. She'd been here every morning for 2 weeks now. Extra training wasn't required, but sleep wasn't coming easy anyway. Might as well do something useful with the time. The cockpit felt familiar as she strapped in. Same switches, same displays, same controls as her F-16. But without the weight of real consequences, everything felt different. Safer. Computer, load scenario Bravo 7 Alpha. Loading air-to-air engagement scenario. For hostile aircraft. Weather conditions clear. Begin when ready. Rachel ran through her pre-flight checks methodically. Radio frequencies set. Weapon systems armed. Targeting computer online. Everything exactly as it should be. The simulation began with enemy aircraft appearing on her radar screen. For blips, just like that day 2 weeks ago. But this time, when the computer instructed her to engage, her finger moved smoothly to the weapons release. Missiles away. Direct hits. Perfect execution. Simulation complete. All targets destroyed. Mission success. Rachel pulled off her helmet and rubbed her eyes. In simulation, she was still the pilot everyone thought she could be. The pilot she used to be. You're up early. Rachel turned to see Staff Sergeant Torres walking toward her with a toolbox in one hand and a coffee cup in the other. Torres was head of the maintenance crew, a 20-year veteran who could fix anything that flew. "Couldn't sleep," Rachel said, climbing out of the simulator. "I know the feeling." Torres set down his toolbox. "Mind if I ask what you're working on in there?" "Air-to-air combat scenarios." "Same ones from advanced training." Torres nodded and sipped his coffee. "How many times you run them?" "Maybe 50. Maybe more." "And?" "Perfect score every time." Torres was quiet for a moment. Around them, the hangar was starting to wake up. More mechanics arriving for the morning shift. Ground crews preparing for the first flights of the day. "You know," Torres said finally, "I've been working on fighters for 2 decades. Seen a lot of pilots come and go." Rachel waited for him to continue. "The ones who worry me aren't the ones who make mistakes. It's the ones who never make mistakes in training but freeze up when things get real." He paused. "But the ones who scare me most are the ones who think the simulator is the same as the real thing." "It's not." Torres smiled. "Captain, you can run that simulation 1,000 times and get perfect scores. But up there?" He pointed toward the ceiling. "There's no reset button. No computer voice telling you what to do. Just you and whatever you're made of." Rachel felt something twist in her stomach. "So what do I do?" "Figure out what made you freeze. Can't fix a problem until you know what caused it." Torres picked up his toolbox and started walking toward a parked F-16. "Your bird's scheduled for maintenance today. Want to help?" Rachel had never worked on aircraft maintenance before. Officers usually left that to the enlisted crew. But she had nothing else planned except more patrol flights over empty desert. "Sure." For the next 3 hours, Rachel learned about hydraulic systems and engine components and electrical connections she'd never thought about before. Torres explained how each system worked, what could go wrong, and how to fix it. "See this sensor here?" Torres pointed to a small device near the engine intake. "This little guy tells your targeting computer where to aim. If it gets damaged, your whole weapon system goes down." Rachel leaned closer. "Has that ever happened in combat?" "More than once. Pilots have to make do with backup systems. Or manual targeting." Torres glanced at her. "Requires trust in yourself instead of the computer." They worked until noon, when Jake appeared in the hangar doorway. "There you are," he said, walking over. "Been looking everywhere for you." Rachel wiped grease off her hands with a shop rag. "Just learning some things. Colonel wants to see you. Something about this afternoon's patrol." Rachel's stomach dropped. Had Martinez decided to ground her completely? "Thanks, Torres," she said. "For everything." Torres nodded. "Anytime, Captain. Remember what I said about finding the real problem." Rachel and Jake walked across the flight line toward headquarters. The afternoon sun was brutal, heat waves rising off the concrete like water. "You've been spending a lot of time in that simulator," Jake said. "Staying sharp. Your scores were already perfect before any of this happened." Rachel didn't answer. How could she explain that perfect scores in simulation felt meaningless now? That every flawless run reminded her of the one time it actually mattered and she'd failed? "Look," Jake said as they reached the headquarters building. "Whatever Martinez wants to discuss, you've got my support. You're a good pilot, Rachel. One bad moment doesn't change that." But walking up the steps to Martinez's office, Rachel wondered if Jake was wrong. Maybe one bad moment was enough to change everything. Maybe she wasn't the pilot everyone thought she was. The question was whether she could become the pilot she needed to be before it was too late. Colonel Martinez's office was exactly what Rachel expected. American flag in the corner. Photos of fighter aircraft on the walls. A desk covered with paperwork and coffee stains. "Sit down, Captain." Rachel took the chair across from his desk. Through the window behind Martinez, she could see aircraft preparing for evening patrol. Her aircraft wasn't among them. "I've been reviewing your performance over the past month," Martinez said, opening a file folder. "Your patrol flights have been flawless. Navigation perfect. Communication excellent. Zero mistakes." Rachel waited for the but that she knew was coming. "But perfect isn't what I need right now. I need pilots who can think under pressure. Make split-second decisions when everything goes wrong." Martinez leaned back in his chair. "Tell me about your time with Sergeant Torres." The question surprised her. "Sir? He says you've been learning maintenance procedures. That's unusual for a pilot. I wanted to understand my aircraft better." "And what did you learn?" Rachel thought about her morning in the hangar. Torres showing her backup systems and manual overrides. Teaching her to trust herself instead of computers. "That there's always another way to complete the mission," she said finally. Martinez nodded. "Torres is good at seeing things others miss. He thinks you're ready to return to combat status." Rachel's heart jumped. "Sir? Tomorrow's mission is a simple escort run. Supply convoy heading through the mountain pass. Should be routine." Martinez closed the file. "But I'm only approving this because Torres vouched for you. Don't make me regret it." Rachel stood to leave, but Martinez's voice stopped her. "One more thing, Captain. Fear isn't your enemy. Every good pilot feels fear. The trick is not letting it make your decisions for you." Rachel walked back to her quarters as the sun set behind the mountains. Tomorrow she would fly combat missions again. The thought should have excited her, but mostly it made her nervous. What if she froze again? What if Torres was wrong about her being ready? She was heating up dinner in her small kitchenette when the first explosion shook the building. The lights flickered. Her coffee mug fell off the counter and shattered on the floor. For a moment, everything was silent. Then the alarms started screaming. Rachel grabbed her flight suit and boots, pulling them on as she ran toward the door. Outside, the base was chaos. Red warning lights strobed from every building. Personnel ran in all directions, some toward defensive positions, others toward aircraft hangars. Another explosion lit up the night sky. This one was closer. Close enough that Rachel could feel the heat wash over her face. "Incoming mortars," someone shouted. "Take cover." Rachel sprinted toward the flight line. If the base was under attack, they would need every aircraft in the air. Combat status or not, this wasn't the time to worry about regulations. The hangar was a madhouse. Ground crews worked frantically to get fighters ready for launch. Some aircraft were already moving toward the runway. Others sat damaged from the mortar attack, their wings twisted and cockpits cracked. "Porter!" Torres appeared through the smoke, his face streaked with grease and soot. "Your bird took shrapnel in the left engine intake. Hydraulic systems compromised." Rachel found her F-16 parked behind two others that had been hit worse. The left side of her aircraft was peppered with metal fragments. Hydraulic fluid pooled on the concrete beneath the wing. "How bad?" she asked. Torres was already climbing onto the wing with his toolbox. "Bad enough. I can patch the hydraulic lines, but you'll be flying on backup systems. No computer assistance for weapons targeting. Manual everything." Another mortar round exploded near the control tower. The blast knocked both of them off balance. "How long do you need?" Rachel shouted over the noise. 20 minutes if you help. 40 if you don't." Rachel grabbed a wrench from Torres's toolbox. "Tell me what to do." They worked together in the strobing red light. Torres called out instructions while Rachel held components and ran replacement parts. Around them, other aircraft launched into the darkness, their afterburners painting the hangar walls with orange light. "Rachel!" Jake's voice cut through the chaos. He ran toward them from across the hangar, his flight suit already on. "What are you doing?" "You're not cleared for combat." "The base is under attack," Rachel said, not looking up from the hydraulic coupling she was tightening. "Everyone flies." Martinez will have your head if you launch without authorization. Rachel finally looked at him. Jake's face was tight with worry. Not about the attack, she realized, but about her. Then he'll have to get in line, she said. Torres slammed the engine cowling shut. That's the best I can do. You've got hydraulics, but they're fragile. Hard maneuvering could blow the whole system. Will it fly? It'll fly. Question is whether it'll fight. The radio in the hangar crackled to life. All available aircraft, immediate launch. Enemy armor column approaching from the north. ETA 20 minutes. Rachel climbed into her cockpit and began her startup sequence. Jake appeared at the ladder beside her aircraft. Rachel, you don't have to prove anything. She looked down at him. Yes, I do. Not like this. Rachel pulled on her helmet and began flipping switches. Engine start. Hydraulics coming online. Navigation systems active. Everything she'd done 1,000 times before, but tonight felt different. Jake, she said over the radio. Take care of yourself up there. What about you? Rachel looked out at the burning base. At the damaged aircraft that would never fly again. At Torres and his crew working frantically to save what they could. I'll figure it out as I go. She released the brakes and began taxiing toward the runway. Behind her, Jake was scrambling to get his own aircraft ready. Ahead of her, the runway stretched into darkness, lit only by the fires burning around the base. In 20 minutes, enemy tanks would reach the ridge overlooking their position. After that, the base would be indefensible. Rachel pushed the throttle forward and felt her damaged F-16 accelerate into the night. This time, there would be no freezing. Rachel's F-16 climbed into the black sky, the base shrinking to a cluster of burning lights below. Her radio crackled with urgent voices as other pilots called out positions and targets. Falcon 3, I've got eyes on the armor column. 20 vehicles, maybe more. Copy that, Falcon 3. They're moving fast through the eastern approach. All Falcon flight, this is control. Enemy air support inbound from the northwest. 2 fighters, low altitude. Rachel switched to the squadron frequency. Control, this is Falcon 2-1. Request vector to target. Silence. Then Jake's voice, tight with concern. Rachel, where are you? I don't see you on radar. Flying solo tonight. My transponder's damaged. Negative, Porter. Return to base immediately. You're not cleared for this mission. Rachel checked her instruments. Hydraulic pressure holding steady, but Torres was right about the fragility. One hard turn could blow the entire system. Sorry, Jake. Radio's breaking up. She switched off the squadron frequency before he could respond. The sudden quiet in her cockpit felt strange after weeks of constant chatter and oversight. Just her and the night sky and whatever lay ahead. The mountains rose like black teeth against the stars. Devil's Canyon cut through them like a wound, narrow and treacherous even in daylight. At night, with damaged systems, it would be nearly impossible to navigate. But it was also the fastest route to intercept the enemy armor. Rachel banked toward the canyon entrance, her aircraft slipping between the rocky walls. The passage was barely wider than her wingspan. In the darkness, she could only see the jagged silhouettes of stone against the stars. Her radio squawked with static and broken transmissions. Under heavy attack, need immediate air support, armor advancing on the ridge. The base was running out of time. Rachel pushed deeper into the canyon, flying by instinct more than instruments. The stone walls seemed to press inward, forcing her to make constant small corrections to avoid scraping her wingtips. Then she heard it. The distinctive whine of jet engines behind her. Her radar screen showed 2 contacts, closing fast. The enemy fighters Jake had mentioned. They'd found her trail and followed her into the canyon. This is getting interesting, she muttered. The first enemy aircraft appeared in her mirrors, its navigation lights visible in the darkness. It was trying to get a missile lock, but the narrow canyon walls made targeting difficult for both of them. Rachel pulled her F-16 into a steep climb, using the canyon's twisting path to break the enemy's lock. Her hydraulic warning light flickered. The damaged system was starting to struggle. The enemy pilot followed her up, matching her climb. Rachel rolled inverted and dove back toward the canyon floor, pulling G-forces that made her vision gray at the edges. Behind her, the enemy aircraft tried to follow. She heard the screech of metal on stone as his wingtip clipped the canyon wall. One down. The second fighter was smarter. It pulled back and climbed above the canyon, trying to get position for a shot when Rachel emerged on the other side. Rachel's radio suddenly crackled to life. A weak signal, but clear enough. Falcon 2-1, this is Control. Enemy armor has reached the ridge. They have direct line of sight to the base. Through a gap in the canyon walls, Rachel could see muzzle flashes in the distance. The tanks were already firing on her base. She pushed her throttle to maximum and rocketed through the final section of canyon. The walls opened up suddenly, revealing the broad valley beyond. And there, spread across the ridge like a string of deadly pearls, was the enemy armor column. 23 vehicles. Tanks and mobile artillery, positioned perfectly to rain destruction on the base below. The second enemy fighter was waiting for her, high and to her right. Rachel saw the missile launch, a streak of light arcing toward her damaged aircraft. Time slowed. This was the moment that had replayed in her nightmares for weeks. Enemy fire incoming. Decisions to make in seconds. No time to think, only react. But this time was different. This time, she wasn't frozen by fear of making the wrong choice. The base below was burning. Her friends were under fire. There was no wrong choice now, only action or inaction. Rachel pulled her F-16 into a hard left turn, the missile streaking past her canopy close enough to feel the heat. Her hydraulic system screamed in protest, red warning lights flooding her cockpit. The enemy fighter swooped down for another attack, but Rachel was already diving toward the valley floor. Toward the ridge. Toward the tanks that were systematically destroying her base. Her targeting computer was dead. The hydraulic failure had knocked out her automated weapons systems. But Torres had taught her about the manual overrides. About trusting herself instead of the machines. Rachel lined up her approach manually, using the old-fashioned method of putting her target in the center of her windscreen and adjusting by feel. The lead tank filled her view. Range closing fast. "Come on," she whispered. "Just like the simulator." Except it's not the simulator at all. She squeezed the trigger. Her cannon roared, tracers arcing through the darkness toward the enemy armor. Direct hit. The lead tank erupted in flames. The other tanks began rotating their turrets toward her, but Rachel was already pulling up and rolling away. The enemy fighter above was diving toward her again, but she had other concerns now. Her hydraulic system finally gave up completely. The control stick went heavy in her hands. Flying would be difficult now. Fighting would be nearly impossible. But she wasn't done yet. Rachel keyed her radio, hoping someone at base could hear her damaged transmitter. "Control, this is Falcon 2-1. I have eyes on the entire enemy formation. Transmitting coordinates now." She read off the numbers from her GPS, marking each tank position for the artillery batteries back at base. If her radio was working, if anyone was listening, those coordinates could turn the tide. Repeat, enemy armor positions are as follows. Behind her, the enemy fighter was closing in for a kill shot. Rachel's damaged F-16 could barely maneuver now. In 30 seconds, maybe less, this would all be over. But 30 seconds might be enough to save the base. Rachel's radio crackled with static, then suddenly came alive. "Falcon 2-1, this is fire control. We have your coordinates. Artillery inbound in 30 seconds. Relief flooded through her. They'd heard her transmission. Behind her, the enemy fighter was closing fast. Rachel could see its missile ports opening in her mirrors. Her damaged F-16 wallowed in the air like a wounded bird, barely responding to her control inputs. "Come on," she whispered to her aircraft. "Just a little longer." 20 seconds. The enemy pilot fired. Rachel saw the missile launch and knew she couldn't evade it. Not with her hydraulics dead and her controls barely functional. But she could do something else. She pointed her F-16 directly at the nearest tank and pushed the throttle forward. If she was going down, she'd take as many of them with her as possible. 15 seconds. The missile streaked toward her. Rachel held her course steady, her aircraft diving toward the ridge like a meteor. The tanks below were firing at her now, their tracer rounds lighting up the darkness. 10 seconds. Then the world exploded. The first artillery shell landed directly on the lead tank, the one Rachel had marked as priority target. The explosion lit up the entire ridge like daylight. More shells followed, walking across the enemy formation with devastating accuracy. The missile chasing Rachel detonated in the artillery blast, its warhead confused by the sudden chaos of explosions and debris. Rachel felt her aircraft shake from the concussion, but she was still flying. The enemy fighter pilot, suddenly finding himself alone over a ridge full of exploding tanks, decided discretion was the better part of valor. Rachel watched him bank hard and disappear into the darkness, heading back toward whatever base he'd come from. The artillery barrage continued for another minute. When the smoke cleared, the ridge looked like a moonscape. Burning vehicles. Scattered debris. Nothing moving. Falcon 2-1, this is control. Magnificent work. Threat neutralized. All enemy armor destroyed. Rachel keyed her radio with a shaking hand. Control, Falcon 2-1. Returning to base. I'm going to need priority landing clearance. Aircraft is damaged. Copy that, 2-1. You're cleared for immediate approach. Emergency crews are standing by. The flight back felt longer than the journey out. Rachel nursed her crippled F-16 through the sky, coaxing performance from systems that should have failed completely. Every few minutes, she lost something else. First the navigation computer. Then the backup hydraulics. Finally, even her radio went silent. But she could see the base now. The fires were smaller. The emergency lights had stopped flashing. People were moving around the flight line instead of running for cover. They'd won. Rachel lined up for landing, fighting to keep her aircraft stable. The runway lights looked impossibly narrow. Without hydraulic assistance, landing would require every bit of skill she'd learned in flight school. She touched down hard, harder than she would have liked, but the F-16 held together. The drag chute deployed and she rolled to a stop near the end of the runway. Fire trucks and ambulances surrounded her aircraft before the engines had even wound down. Rachel shut off her systems and sat in the cockpit for a moment, hardly believing she was still alive. When she finally climbed out, she found Jake waiting at the bottom of the ladder. "You crazy, magnificent, completely insane pilot," he said, grinning from ear to ear. "Is everyone okay?" Rachel asked. "Base took some damage, but no casualties. Thanks to someone who gave us targeting data at exactly the right moment." Colonel Martinez appeared through the crowd of ground crew and emergency personnel. His expression was unreadable. "Captain Porter," he said formally. "A word." Rachel followed him away from the crowd. Her legs felt unsteady, adrenaline finally wearing off. "You disobeyed direct orders," Martinez said when they were alone. "Yes, sir." "You launched an unauthorized mission into hostile territory." "Yes, sir." "You engaged enemy aircraft without backup or support." Rachel looked him in the eye. "Yes, sir. I did." Martinez was quiet for a long moment. Around them, the base was returning to normal. Ground crews were assessing damage. Pilots were debriefing in small groups. The routine of military life resuming after crisis. "Your call sign was Falcon 2-1, Martinez said finally. "Yes, sir." "Not anymore." Martinez almost smiled. From now on, you're a Ridge Runner. Seemed appropriate, given tonight's performance. The name hit Rachel harder than she expected. A clean slate. A chance to be known for something other than the moment she'd frozen. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet. You're still in trouble for disobeying orders. But we'll discuss that after you've had some sleep. Martinez walked away, leaving Rachel alone on the flight line. She looked up at the stars, the same ones that had guided her through the canyon a few hours ago. They looked different now. Friendlier somehow. So, Torres's voice came from behind her. How did the manual targeting work out? Rachel turned to find the sergeant approaching with his toolbox, as always. Like you said. Sometimes you have to trust yourself instead of the machines. Torres nodded and began examining her aircraft. The F-16 looked like it had been through a war, which Rachel supposed it had. Think she'll fly again? Rachel asked. With enough work, anything can fly again. Question is whether it'll be the same aircraft afterward. Rachel considered that. Maybe being different isn't such a bad thing. Torres smiled. No, Captain. Sometimes different is exactly what you need. 3 weeks later, Rachel sat in the briefing room preparing for another combat mission. The same room where she'd once felt invisible. The same chairs where other pilots had questioned her ability. But everything was different now. When Colonel Martinez called her name, she stood with confidence. When Jake asked if she was ready, she answered without hesitation. Outside, her repaired F-16 waited on the flight line. Torres had done good work. It flew better than ever. Rachel walked toward her aircraft, her call sign Ridge Runner painted proudly beneath the cockpit. She was ready for whatever came next. If Rachel's journey from fear to courage inspired you, hit that like button and subscribe for more military stories that honor our heroes. What moment in this story resonated with you most? Share your thoughts in the comments below, especially if you're a veteran with your own story to tell.